Welcome everyone. I'm Lauren Hawkins. Thanks for tuning in with us to Spirituality Adventures. We are so glad you're here and we're very excited about the content we get to share with you through our blogs and podcasts. Spirituality Adventures is made possible by your support. One way you can support us is by liking, following, subscribing, or sharing any of these podcasts or blogs that you like. Another way you can support us is by going to our website, www.spiritualityadventures.com. There you can click the support tab and you can sign up for a monthly subscription or a one-time gift. We appreciate all your support. Now here's Fred.
Welcome everybody to Spirituality Adventures. This is a place to really pursue and explore spirituality in a non-judgmental way. And today we have a guest with us, Nate Allen, and we're so glad to have you here with us today, Nate. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, so Nate and I have not known each other, but for...
Do we have a week?
Maybe a week.
We have a week. A week of friendship.
And our connector was Matt Cox, which he's always here, but hardly ever says anything. But hey, Matt.
Hello.
Matt is my videographer, and he's with Harbor Media Productions, and he and Nate have had a relationship. He said, you ought to meet my friend Nate. We had coffee and it was just fun to hear your story. And so maybe I thought we'd start with that, kind of give us a little bit of your background and introduce yourself to the audience by maybe where you grew up and kind of your family history and stuff like that.
Yeah, I grew up in Oregon, so southern small town Oregon, so a place called Roseburg. And it's a timber town, hardworking, kind of lots of time in playing baseball and kind of church were my two main expressions outside the house. And so it's just like I think if you're not from small towns in the Northwest, they have a lot of similarities to small towns in the South or Middle America. They're just kind of like conservative little places and hardworking people. So that's kind of where I came from.
Middle class,
middle to lower class,
blue collar kind of stuff.
Definitely.
Yeah. So what was your family like growing up? You have a religious background?
Yeah,
there
I mean, we were super Christians, and I mean that we were like three times a week in church. And I don't know, do people still do Wednesday night services or Sunday night services? They did where I grew up.
Some do, I'm sure.
Yeah, I haven't been to a church for a long time that had the three mandatory services, but
like Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night kind of thing. Yeah.
So grew up in that, and then also went to 12 years of Christian school. So I was very much like Christianity was a huge part of our identity. Mm-hmm. So
what denomination?
Started Assemblies of God, rolled into Foursquare, and then ended up kind of in a post Vineyard situation for a while.
Okay.
Those are like three of the main components for the first maybe 25 years of my life.
Okay. What kind of Christian school?
Non-denominational. I like to say it was an example of Christian education gone horribly wrong. I actually just posted something on Facebook the other day that said, so if you knew me in high school, how many times was I just completely spaced out writing songs and not paying attention? And my math teacher from back then was like, I don't remember you spaced out at all. I was like, I'm pretty sure I sung my way through half of your math classes.
That's funny.
So it was just a non-denominational school. I think when you get that many people from all different philosophical and denominational backgrounds together, I think if you try to hold a really tight rein, it gets really messy. And they definitely tried to I went to two of them, and one was just really strong with the rules, and that turned into just a big old mess. By seventh grade, there was fight. School I had maybe 25 people in my class, and there was fights every week, or close to it. And at one time,
fist fights,
people getting thrown through doors, people getting stabbed with pencils,
just out of
well, I think a lot of angry kids and a lot of rules that didn't make any sense, and it really just got to be a toxic place.
Wow.
So
let's talk a little bit about spiritual abuse here in a little while.
We can go there.
Yeah.
Try not to jump ahead.
Yeah. Well, I want to get into that, but not right now. So you Christian school, you graduated. Where'd you go after high school?
After high school, I went to Youth with a Mission for a couple of years. And
Okay.
I was like missionary track, and then DTS.
Where'd you do that at?
In Colorado.
Okay.
So spent some time in Denver and got to travel in Asia, India, and Nepal.
Okay.
And that was it was really life-changing for me. I felt very like it really fit who I was, like personality-wise and adventure-wise. And I think an organization like YWAM can not be good for everybody, but for me it was like, oh, this is totally like it fits my desire for like to see life outside of my little town.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that had great DTS experiences. Yeah.
It really comes down to like, because every base is autonomous.
Mm-hmm.
So it really just comes down to the leadership. I mean, you could end up with like a fantastic experience or something that really is really hard. So I was lucky.
I had several friends that went to, I think their like headquarters is in Hawaii, I think, and they went to the school there, and and then I've known people who have done work with the Mercy Ships and just all over the world.
Yeah, I think I mean, it definitely was, and it's still like I have some of those connections still. So I mean, I've had lots of interactions with them over the years. So
yeah, well, cool. So after YWAM,
I decided I need to throw rock and roll shows. So I started doing that. 2002 to roughly 4, I was a rock and roll metal hardcore promoter. And that was my main thing.
Based in Oregon?
Yeah, I went back to Oregon and felt like my future wasn't in YWAM. And it, after a few months, became clear that I needed to jump into the rock and roll world. And I did that. Passionately for a couple of years, and that was my promoting season. And then it's kind of now I'm more of a songwriter on this.
So what years were you doing the rock and roll? You say that again.
I mean, I threw my first concert when I was 17 in '98.
Okay.
So I have been I think 23 years or so in the music industry.
All right.
So that was like I was definitely a promoter first. So the first, I guess that would be 4, 5, 6 years, I was just a concert promoter. Like I'd write songs, but my main like outlet was organizing and bringing things together.
And at first you were doing hard rock.
I mean, I was in that point in time, it was just that was what the people wanted to hear and what I liked. So a lot of hardcore, a lot of metal, a little bit of punk, but it was, I mean, this was, if you are a music scene person, you'd know that like the Blood Brothers were really big in the Northwest, and like, so there was like a lot of like hardcore and metal. I mean, it was definitely not timid, and there was some. I was booking some bands that would say align with Christianity, but the concerts overall were not that way. It was just like, these are regular shows, and if you can, if you can play well and I like you, then we're going to bring you in. And ironically, like I'd kind of gotten to booking things based on just like feel. And then that bit me, because a few years later, I ended up like not booking my people that I'm now friends with. Like, man, if I would have like put the CD on, I would have really like gotten a better feel, but I was booked on a lot of relational connections. So.
Yeah. Fun. So what transpired next? Get us into your...
I felt like I needed to go to San Francisco, and there was a seminary program that I was interested in. It was like alternative, emerging church, punk rock church type thing. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go to San Francisco. And then the week I went to visit, the school closed. But I still had kind of set the ball in motion to move forward with my life. And I was really burnt out and not getting the support I needed in my little town. So moved to San Francisco and joined a church there and met my now wife. And that was the next step. So I think I went through all the phases. I mean, I got there and I got super depressed. I think it was my first time really away from home. And then I was real isolated. So I got to the point where I was crying every 15 minutes if I wasn't talking to somebody. I just couldn't hold it together. Like like today I had like a little bit of a trauma response up here, not because of this meeting. Well, maybe because of this meeting, but like more just like got hit with emotion. And I was able to regulate and, breathe through it. And I couldn't do that then. I was like, I am totally just a ball of tears. And so I finally told, I think my friend Leo, I was like, I'm crying all the time. And, because when I was around people, I could hold it together. But then as soon as I was isolated, it was just tears. And he was like, he's like, man, he's a really, he's a pastor, but he's also like the president of an engineering firm. He's a real like business calm is a good way to describe him. It's like, I think you're probably designed to feel more than you are. And because I'd kind of bottled it all away. I mean, being raised Assemblies of God, it's really emotional. And then there's a bunch of other factors in my life that made me like run from emotion. And so when I started like breaking down, I was like, I just thought I'm broken. Like I'm broken to the point where like there's something wrong about this on many levels. And so he challenged me to kind of figure out, try to kind of stare into the brokenness maybe instead of just like run from it.
Yeah.
And San Francisco was a huge life turning point for me. I went from like, I think somebody just pushing really, really hard to somebody who began to turn to like inward and reflect on what growth meant through difficulty versus just like accomplishment.
Okay. Yeah. So if I remember right, the church that you connected with in San Francisco at one time had some kind of Vineyard connection.
Yeah,
Is that right?
It was Vineyard a few years before we'd been there.
Okay.
Like, it was post Vineyard.
Okay.
Which
Gotcha.
meant they'd been kicked out of the Vineyard, and I'm still not totally sure exactly what happened.
I wouldn't know either.
Ironically, we've been with a priest named Michael Flowers for many years, and he was actually connected to that church too.
Okay.
So like there's that, even though like we're 20 years or whatever from that situation, it's still like the post Vineyard thing echoes.
Yeah. Well, and I was a Vineyard pastor for 28 years till I resigned in 2019.
Yeah.
And so a big, huge part of my life, chunk of my life. So I would have had met your pastor at one point or another there in the one in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Not sure about the current guy, but anyway.
Yeah.
I just thought that was an interesting. I wasn't expecting that connection when we sat down and talked and had coffee. So, so out from San Francisco, you met your wife, and then you guys kind of launched into some interesting stuff.
Yeah, well, first after San Francisco, I was like, what do I want to do with my life for the first time or second time? And I decided that I was qualified to be like a pastor or like some sort of like use this ministry training, but I didn't want to do that. And it's like, well, I'm also writing these songs. Let me try to be a touring artist. And so I got in my van and I toured around, played 140 shows in 6 months by myself in the van, and went from this guy who stands in the corner and can't get your attention to the guy who would jump on your table and do what he needs to like command an audience. And so like I had this like year of like kind of learning in action. And then after that, I got married. My wife and I got together, and she, and then at our wedding, we played a song together, and that was like the start of our Destroy Nate Allen band phase together.
Destroy Nate Allen.
Yeah.
And then this was a punk band, is that right?
We played interactive sing-along, folk punk. We're a punk band in a lot of ways. I think we kind of thrived on that interactive performance art theater space. That line between seeing, there was a real conscious effort to see how far we could push people. So like what does it take to engage? So can I make eye contact and pull somebody in from 20 feet? That's great. But do I need to go up and like play with them a little more to get them to like fully engage in the concert? And I mean, we were kind of a basement punk rock band touring in basements. So we weren't like rolling in the money. So sometimes you're like real hungry. And how do you get the audience to pay attention if there's only 10 of them? you put on a hell of a show. So like, I mean, we've definitely played nights where we're like, there's not many people here and we need gas money. So does that mean I will roll in the mud? Yes. Does that mean I will climb on your table and just, do something ridiculous? Yes, I will. So, or would. I mean, that's my past.
Right. But no, it sounded so, I wish I could have been at one of the events.
They're fun. I mean,
sounded like a combination of punk rock and improv and all that.
It definitely had all that going on. So we're not if you're a punk fan, you either really liked us or you were kind of like, oh gosh, what the hell is this? And we were okay with that. I mean, we it's just part of who we were. So
yeah. Who were your influences in your musical world? Like, moving into this.
Oh, I was
musical influences. Yeah.
I mean, on a basic level, like stuff like Johnny Cash or Social Distortion or Green Day would be like foundational to me. But then like you also have every weirdo band that I've ever heard. So like you could be like Adam and His Package or Goaty Hook or like, or now like P-Lander Z would be a contemporary with us. That's like a band that's weird. Like that, kind of, I think Goaty Hook said this wonderful quote that they wanted to have more fun than their audience. And I mean, seriously took that as a mission statement. So like, I didn't care if there was 20 people in the room. They might like us or they might not, but either way, I didn't want that to spoil the time we were having. So we're kind of like, there was a playful element that emerged that I really embraced. Mm. And so my wife's much more brash. I'm West Coast sensitive guy. She's straightforward East Coast girl. So she likes all the loud, yelly punk rock. I like all the soft, goofy punk rock. And so like our band together was this like acoustic blend of our two personalities, which is, if we were kind of in the folk punk scene, which is a lot of like kind of passive people, if I'm going to stereotype, and we're not passive, like in musical form. Like I can be that way sometimes, but not when I'm on a stage.
Yeah.
Very often. So
cool.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun and brash.
Seen that. Yeah, that's fun. So you guys toured a lot of years, right?
Did,
I mean, this was
2000. I mean, technically, Destroy Nate Allen is still around. So I mean, it started in 2007, and we maintained our 125, 150-ish pace show a year pace for 6 years.
Wow.
So we cost a couple years ago. I played my 1,000th show. So. That's kind of we're somewhere in the low thousandths because of pandemic and life crisis.
With Destroy Nate Allen,
mostly Destroy Nate Allen, and I started counting the other ones because at some point like Destroy Nate Allen started as a solo project, then it became this loud thing, and I still write these solo songs, so it kind of just blends together at some point. Yeah.
All right. So how in the world did you land in Kansas City after all of that?
I mean, I was so. Bragging about all the numbers, works for me. But the dark side of that is I was very much becoming a workaholic. So I was like, I'm from a small town that doesn't have much going for it except for work ethic. Like, and so I totally jumped into that pace. And so if you look at, you were looking at my website, there's a lot on there. Mm-hmm. Because if there's one like, I don't suffer from lack of ideas. I over function. Mm-hmm. So I fell into being a workaholic, and I was like, how do I, we were not, Destroy Nate Allen was not the most popular band, and we weren't like, we were kind of a wild theater band, and most wild, like I don't know if there's any wild theater band in the world that's like the most popular thing on their scene. Mm-hmm. And so, but I'm like, if you don't like me, I will outwork you. Mm-hmm. And so lots of shows, lots of pushing lots of albums. And it just became like where I couldn't stop. And my dad had been a workaholic. I'm from a line of workaholics, and I had some friends that was ruining their lives and their marriages. And I was like, I don't want that to be my end of my story. And so I was like, okay, 2012, I graduated college. I was gonna get a job, like, cause I'm like, I didn't mean I wanted to stop what I was doing, but it meant I knew I needed to shift to like, at least, I figured it'd take 6 months to stop being a workaholic. I mean, that seems realistic in my book. And I just kept looking for work and not finding any. In Portland, I spent maybe 9 months hunting for a job that would be a post-college job, and ended up getting pointed back here to a contract I could make some money on. And so we moved back here for work, and then found out that Kansas City is a whole lot cheaper than Portland, Oregon. So I say we moved for work and we stayed for price.
Okay.
So that's
and that was what, 7 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, 7,
Something?
8. It's kind of adding up.
All right.
So, yeah.
Well, welcome to Kansas City. 7 years in,
Oh, man,
8 years in.
I mean, from the West Coast cities where you're only there for 6 months or 8 months or something, you kind of get in the pace real quick. Kansas City's totally different. Like, I didn't get that it takes years and years to adjust, I think, to being here, which is just a totally different deal. So thank you.
Different ethos, different deal. Yeah. So I've traveled a lot, but Kansas City's kind of always been home, even though I lived in Texas for a few years, Virginia for a few years, and then just traveled. But yeah, so this kind of Midwest ethos thing of Kansas City is home for me for sure. Well, cool. Well, I jumped into your newest project, which is Good Saint Nathaniel.
Yes.
And the title of your album there is Hide No Truth. And so I want to talk about that a little bit. And then also you sent me a pre-copy of your new book that's coming out, and it's called Launching, Landing, and Moving Forward.
Yeah.
And so I kind of listened through Hide No Truth, that album, and then I read the book, and I have a bunch of thoughts and questions to run by you. But before I get to that, though, the only thing I saw on your website that kind of hinted at your older punk rock style was old guitar. Yeah, which I loved. I mean, that was kind of had that punk vibe to it, and
yeah, I tend to be like, I go all in for something, so I'll shift pretty hard, like, and I'm not really sure how it all works together, the different bands. I'm currently writing something that I think maybe will mix the two together a bit, where I'm like, because I mean, if you see me live, like this kind of like goofy, silly, smiley, ridiculous Nate is what you'll get, even if I'm playing like pretty serious songs. And so in some ways I'm trying to like work the two together. Hide No Truth was by far a recovery record. It was an album that I needed to write, and it let out a lot of the pain that I didn't think fit any other way than quiet, sad folk songs. Old Guitar was actually recorded the same sessions.
Oh, really?
And it was just like, this song does not fit with the rest of them. Yeah. This is like a fun ode to playing guitar and having a good time, which is, I mean, I like to balance the two, and it's, I know that, I'm not totally sure how those two worlds work together, because folk musicians like to act serious and punk rockers like to act weird. So
full of memories and got some scars. I thought, it's a good metaphor for life, though. Totally. So, and the backdrop to me on both the Hide No Truth and the book that you've written that will be coming out, it's going to be released here fairly soon, it sounded like. Yeah. But it seemed like the two big backdrops for both of those works were, and you said recovery, but like recovery from workaholism and perhaps spiritual abuse.
Yeah, I think those are the two
big things.
Hide No Truth is more or less rotates around spiritual abuse. And the workaholic piece, I'm still chasing that thread, because that was like what got me into this world of like recovering. And then it's just led me through every layer as I keep chasing it. And so in some ways, like, the spiritual abuse was a huge factor underneath that I had to dig down a long ways to get to. And then when I realized, that I'd been the victim of spiritual abuse, it really made a lot of sense. I had, for a long time, had difficulty in church, and I wasn't really sure why. Like, I just knew, like, there'd be times where my wife would want to go to church and I'd have a meltdown, and I didn't know why. And it got to the point where I think she tried to set a Bible on our dash one time, and I threw it across the car. And because I was so afraid of being labeled a Christian, and I didn't know why. So those are like little snippets. And so when I was like, spiritual abuse, that makes sense. And then I looked through a bunch of abuse charts, and that made sense, and started putting pieces together. And so 2014, it hit me that had been part of my story. And it kind of was such a like red light moment that I had to stop and work on that part of me.
Let's dive into that a little bit. What did that look like for you? What did spiritual abuse look like for you? And when did it start?
It started, I'm going to get, I think it started before I was born. Like, I think my home was definitely an atmosphere of my parents were both victims of different kinds of wounding, and including from the church. And so I think that there was an element of fear that was built into how we functioned. Like, on the way over here, I got like, I now call it a trauma response. Before, it would just be like a flood of emotion that I couldn't control. And that was pretty much present in the home whenever there was a church service. And it wasn't me that was getting traumatized. My parents would have these tension moments. And, at that point, I just thought, maybe I'm a kid that's not dressing up right, or whatever the language is. But there was always tension. And then when I got into the atmospheres, they were legalistic, but harsh and mean, from the churches to the schools to the homes that I was around. There was always this weird, like, you're supposed to be Christian and loving, but you're not. It's complicated. So I remember in, I think, 3rd grade, I came home and asked my mom, like, why don't the Christians act like Christians? And I had a teacher, ironically named Miss Hate. So it was like perfect name. It was like a first-year teacher, angry and mean. I'm sure we're dealing with difficult kids, so there's different angles on this, but it kind of like was a death by a thousand cuts situation. So like thousands of negative interactions, maybe a weird rule, a weird glance that starts to pile up. And then there was like the major conflicts, the people that are like decide they don't like me, or I'm on the wrong side of something. And so, those last for years. And, they leave bigger marks. But I think when I piled it all up, so like the, dozen or so really major things that cut deep, and the thousands of little things, it was like, one, it was highly uncomfortable to identify as a Christian, specifically in public. So like this kind of conversation that we're having right here, for me, is the result of years of therapy.
Yes, I get that.
I couldn't have this conversation back then, before I started recovering. But so there was an identification piece, but there was also like a piece where I just had to like pull back and figure out who I was, because I think the abuse had pried me, was kind of shoving me away from spirituality, even if I wanted it. It was like, it hurt too much and reminded me of too much baggage. Yeah.
So. Man, if I could, that kind of experience is just so prevalent. In our world today. And I just released a new blog just a couple of days ago on grace-filled people.
Neat.
And it just basically talks about what that looks like for me. Because I think, we talked a little bit about, and my audience has heard me talk about my own experience, and a lot of it was my own meltdown, my own poor decisions, all that kind of stuff. But it resulted in a spiritual crisis for me that at my darkest moments literally felt like an atheist, literally questioned everything I'd ever believed for a different set of reasons than what you've just talked about, but still had a meltdown spiritually and had to kind of like deconstruct Fred. I don't know if, if that's and then like, who am I? Cause this is the things that I questioned or things that had been a part of my life for so long. And spiritual certainty, though I always felt like I was a grace-based preacher person. And even when I got on social media again several months ago, a lot of people made like, you taught us grace, which is cool. Like I'm going, oh, good. Something good came out of it. But at the same time, I had never known spiritual uncertainty like I did there. And so when you're sharing that, it does, like all of that abuse results in a crisis of sorts when it comes to your certain, what do you believe?
I think
who are you?
It has to in some aspect. Like, I think, if you're in an abusive situation, if you are in an abusive situation, you can only stay there so long before you have to shift. So like, or if you're in a situation that's traumatizing, maybe even is a better word. Like, so I think like for me, my abuse separated me from faith, even if I wanted to be there, because it was like, there was pain pushing me. And so I think you have kind of two choices if you've been in that situation. You can either like just wash your hands of it and walk away. Or you can say, what does this mean for me? And you can wrestle with it. And because of a lot of different factors that I could talk about all day with attachment and all sorts of therapeutic stuff. My inclination in trauma is to push to run towards the pain, like to deal with it. So like if we were in a relationship and you were hurting me, I would try to figure out how to solve that relationship, which has foundational things to do with how I developed as a permanent person. And other people are like, I'm done. They pull away. And so I think there's a lot of like, you kind of have to choose how you handle that. And for me, I'm a work through it, try to like get to the bottom of a person. So so for instance, being a workaholic, I didn't like try to change careers. I tried to figure out why I was workaholic.
Yeah. So tell us why were you?
Oh, well, there was a shame underneath everything. I was a workaholic with a stress addiction. I used to bite my nails like crazy. I don't anymore. I read a book called Addiction and Grace that pointed out that biting your nails is a stress response. And I was like, oh, dang, I didn't even know. And so, there was attachment issues with my mom. There was spiritual abuse going on there. There was some emotional abuse, physical abuse, that kind of all piled up. And then underneath all of that, or maybe concurrent to it, was the spiritual abuse, which is just kind of like in everything that I'd been a part of. And then, so all of that fuels my workaholic response. So like, if I'm afraid someone's not going to like me, one of my responses is to jump into action and try to get them to like me. Okay. It's not my only trauma response, but it's one of them. Like if I think that you'll like me because I can like, if I can produce something that you'll like, I'll try it. That's so that, I think that was kind of the key to the workaholic piece. And also I was like compulsive. So I don't want to just say like I was motivated. It was like, my wife would say, can we take a day off on tour? And I'd say no. It was easier for me to drive 8 hours, play a show to nobody in a town nobody had heard of me before, than it was to just say, hey, let's just rest. And that drive would cost all the financial cost and all that, because that was where I found significance, was trying to get you to like me.
Yeah. What does shame look like for you? Because that underneath all of that you say is shame. What does that look like for you? What does that feel like for you?
There's a sense of just being broken. And I think theologically, it has a big theological root for me. In the last day or so, I've been writing a song about people being good, like overall, like even if like we are, even if we're flawed humans, we do make mistakes, that underneath that, there's still like goodness. If we are made in the image of God, then that means our bones and our muscles and our like breath is all a reflection of a good thing, versus the like, our actions are different. Those are like separate. Like you could judge an action, but you can't judge somebody's breath. So like if the good stuff is irregardless of our like of our action or our choice, then there's something good in everybody. And I was just like staring that concept down, trying to write a really like complicated song. And I asked our babysitter, who's Eastern Orthodox, about this concept. And so we were talking about the like the good, the inherent good in everybody. And so if I roll the tape back 6 or 7 years ago, that concept wouldn't have been there. And I would have been, I am just a flawed, broken human responding out of sin and shame. And I mean, just running hard to try to get some sense of I'm okay. And I think for me, there's been a big shift theologically, which is why I bring that up, like to realize that, one, I don't believe anymore that God chose to damn me to hell from birth. I've kind of tossed the original sin thing out the door. And realizing that there's a bunch of Christians, specifically Eastern Orthodox Christians, that don't believe that makes me feel like I'm just swimming in different waters versus just like trying to create my own thing. So that really helped with the shame. And then realizing like there is so much that I do, and I think a lot of us do, that we don't understand why. So like I'm currently, we'll talk about this in a bit, but I'm currently in school to become a therapist. And so I'm really thinking a lot about subconscious activity. Yeah. And I think there is so much that we do out of response to pain. Yeah. And since we're not, I don't think we're willfully hurting people. So I think that I am the kind of person that internalizes mistakes and thinks that they're all mine, and realizing that relationship is a two-way street. So, I think in some ways, like behavior and shame are a two-way street too. Like I would internalize it all, and I don't think that was my job to do. I think that was a broken response. Yeah.
Yeah. Great thoughts. I think diving down into that is a huge deal. It's interesting, the Hebrew Bible, when it talks about, humans being created in the image of God, and that was so interesting because in the ancient Near East, like only the kings, were in the image of God. Yeah. But this Hebrew passage democratized the image of God in all humanity. And then even after post-fall, if you look, the image of God is never eliminated from human beings. You could say it's been marred or broken or affected in some way, but it's never gone or eliminated. So the inherent dignity and worth of an individual is, I think, such an important truth, especially when we're trying to operate in grace and seeing people, seeing people for who they really are versus, just their worst moment or something like that. I know I've greatly appreciated people who have responded to me in grace these last couple of years. I have needed it.
I appreciate it a lot. Like
So good stuff. Well, so I'm glad we dove into that because both your book and your album, Hide No Truth, really all of that's kind of a backdrop to that. Yeah. So this is like, I think you described as dark folk music. Yeah. And I mean, there were times when I'm thinking, this is a little Johnny Cash-esque. And then there's times I was thinking, this is a little Dylan-esque. And then there's times I was thinking, this is a little, I kept they're just moments when,
Yeah.
But I thought, you're definitely just exploring. And so there's these really dark moments in your music, but then there's also a lot of hope that shines through as well. I loved Lightning.
Yeah.
I love that. Where no hope is found, silence is the loudest sound.
Yeah.
And then you say, may your love break forth as the lightning touches down. When the fallout is uncountable from the damage we have done. I was like, oh gosh. So, I could relate to that.
Yeah.
In your book, there was a quote that you did from Henry Nouwen.
Yeah.
And thinking about this grace-filled people thing and some of the lyrics that, because as I listened to your songs, I was like, oh, this is 2019 for me. That was my darkest year on record, and I just turned 60 a few days ago. Yeah. So I've had a few years behind me. And so, but this quote, the friend who can be silent with us in a moment of despair or confusion, who can stay with us in an hour of grief and bereavement, who can tolerate not knowing, not curing, not healing, and face with us the reality of our powerlessness, that is a friend who cares. Yeah. That's in your book. You quoted that, and it's like, whew, that's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah.
So rare though, right?
It is.
People don't know how to do that.
Well, and so from a technical standpoint, like I got really, I'm a really big fan of Cloud and Townsend, Henry Cloud. And,
yes.
As a writer. And he has a comment where he talks about qualifications of friendship. And he says that pretty much, this is a loose summary, but like you kind of just, you're only qualified to sit, like, let's see the right word. If you interrupt with someone in their story, you kind of disqualify yourself from listening to that part of it. So if you're like, I want to cure you, then you've kind of disqualified yourself from being able to like enter into the pain. And so I think that Henry Nouwen quote nails it. It's like, this is like, if we're going to be with someone in a caregiving role, we need to be able to sit with them in that hardness. It doesn't mean you don't care. It just means that you're willing to like set aside your reaction to be with them. And for me, that was like, oh, this is a skill I can learn? Cool. Because I didn't have it. Like it's something I've learned how to do, or I'm learning how to do. And it was interesting to like kind of shift to where like, okay, I can gain this skill, skill I can learn to sit and listen.
Yeah.
And then I can, in turn be better at what I want to be, which is a good friend.
It's great stuff. I loved Making Repairs, the video that you did on that. Like the couple images with you diving into the deep, and then with the little cart where you packed away all your stuff. Yeah. Bought an iPad, thought it would fix me. iPod, thought it would fix me, and I don't know. I'll be in the basement making repairs. Yeah. Just good stuff.
Thank you.
I related to that so well. But hopeful ones too, like Hands Held Together. For me, so like when I got into the spirituality adventures thing, I wrote a blog just called Spirituality Adventures. I'm trying to help people figure out what I'm doing. Yeah. And I kind of define spirituality as connection with self, others, and something greater than you. And that hands held together, that connection and belonging that is a part of our spirituality. Yeah. I thought you really captured that in that song. It was really well done. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed, and I've always been a fan of like dark movies and dark songs, and as long as there's a little hope, I can go there. I'm a little like, if you get to know me, you'll find that I'm a pretty optimistic, we kind of shift between like the side of me that's really somber and the side of me that's really goofy. So like the two bands, like really serious, really silly. And so those are both in like part of who I am. And so even in like, if I'm in a dark space, even musically, I like try to put some hope in there, because it's kind of, it's part of who I am. So even on performing those songs, the couple years, like there was a big shift of like, how do I make essentially songs about trauma into something that like you can feel like it uplifts you. So like it was a shift. Yeah. It's because you have to dig for it. Yeah, it's there though, definitely. Yeah. And I really, I really liked it. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing, like what you're doing now with therapy stuff, and tell people how they can, find your stuff. So,
well, I'm writing actively as Good Saint Nathaniel. That's my current main creative focus. That's my like songwriter project. So it'll jump everywhere from quiet folk songs to like kind of louder rock and roll. The main factor is just I'm the writer. And so that's, you can look that up, look up Good Saint Nathaniel. I even have the websites with all the different variations of Nathaniel. So when you can't spell it, it's okay. You'll still find me. And then the other like main focus right now is I'm currently in school to become a marriage and family therapist. So I am 6 months into a 2-year graduate program. So that is my right now I'm on spring break. So I'm on can relax just a little bit, and then it's back to the grindstone for that.
Yeah. Well, good. So you have been reviewed by a ton of indie magazines, indie papers, indie websites and all that kind of stuff. And then you have reviewed like loads of indie singer-songwriters.
Yeah.
And that's all on your website.
If you go to goodsaintnathaniel.com, there's a big press archive and all sorts of stuff.
Right. It was fun to see all of that.
Yeah.
It was interesting to read, some of the quotes from some of the reviews on your work.
Yeah.
So interesting. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, what I would like for you to play a song for our folks. What are you thinking of doing?
Let's see. I think I would play a song called Better from the Ends That record.
Yes.
I think that was the one on the drive up here when you texted me, like, you want to play a song? I'm like, yeah, I can. If I'm not, I can do that. I think I got the lyrics. So
right.
That's what I'd play. It's, to me, it's the most Nate Allen-esque song on that record. It kind of is an uplifting-ish song. And,
before you do that, let me ask one other question. For you, what is the creative process like? Do you have a space that you work in? Do you need the right kind of environment to be creative? Does it come to you in a moment? Is it something that you work on as well?
Both.
Okay.
Creativity there's a 2-part process for me. I'm what I call it I'm a song catcher. So I go to the bathroom, I come out with a song. I, do the dishes, a song pops up. And I mean, they come quick and they come often. And I mean, I write a lot. So that is part of my process. So it's okay, I got this idea, it pops up. I mean, voice notes and a phone are the most amazing thing ever. So I just record the note and then I just go on with my life. And then when I have the space, I go back and revisit that idea. So maybe there's a song that's really on my brain. I'll go work on that, or I just want to work on a song or a book. So I'll sit down and then I'll go through the technical process of making it what I want it to be. Mm-hmm. So there's because I used to play sports. So I liken it to the, my silly band is kind of this I just blew the analogy, is the, goofy thing, and then Good Saint Nathaniel is serious, but in the same part there's this mystical, I catch a song and then I go back and I have to work it. So one part is this sparkly idea, I'm catching it and put it in my phone. The other part is I'm building a table. I just I'm going in there and I'm crafting and shifting, and I'm at the base level, I'm a songwriter. So that is my goal is to write a song that I think will stand up with just a guitar, or not even a guitar. If it can be stripped down to its bare essentials, then that's a song. Right. And then you can build it up as much as you want to. But if the song's not there, so my focus is really on that foundational piece. Yeah. And they're different. I'll take a song that it's probably, I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 hours a song. When unless they come really fast, which those are really fun. But I mean, those still take an hour or two to sit down, hammer out real quick. And so that's my process. The book is a little different, but it was similar, where I had this idea of, I have written this big, heavy album, And I know it's going to open up some certain doors in conversations with people. Like they might come to a concert thinking they're going to see a folk show, and then I'm like discussing trauma actively on stage. Like, and to me that can be a little harsh or dangerous. And so what I did is like, I want to put something together so they can like have a brochure to take home or a zine or whatever it is. Like, so they can have like what happens when you just found out about something difficult in your life. And that became a book. But it was the same idea. Like I wrote it in a you know, passion moment. You know, it didn't take very long, just a few weeks or something. And then I've been reworking it into what I want it to be. So like the version you have is the 2019 version, and there'll be a 2021 version that's been worked and refined and organized. So
Good stuff. So. Yeah, I like the stripped down stuff that you do. It's kind of fun. It reminded me, I mean, in a different, like with electric guitar, I remember I watched a documentary, I think it was called It Might Get Loud or something like that. And it had Jimmy Page and it had The Edge from U2 and then it had Jack White. And Jack White was the one that like went backwards to a string on a piece of wood and a nail and stripped down. And so when I heard you, I was thinking of that, just that stripped down.
Totally.
Coming unglued and you're doing your own loops and all that.
I mean, for me, that's like the basics of songs and art breaks down to those elemental pieces. Yeah. And I'm of the mindset, if I can break it down to that, like, I mean, I played shows where my guitar's broken and it works. Like I have done Destroy Nate Allen sets. They're videoed on the internet somewhere of me just yelling my lyrics and people are screaming along. And it's categorically not that different from when my guitar works. Like
good.
That to me is when it breaks down to a song.
Essence. Yeah. All right. Well, let's have you do Better. This is the song Better from Hide No Truth. Good Saint Nathaniel.
Cool. Safer on the sidewalk and the shadows out of sight. When a cutting glance of disapproval will give you frostbite. It's simple to stay comfortable while known people die. I just focus on task at hand, straighten up my tie. But I think we can do better, a whole lot better. A whole lot better than this. So I think we can do better, a whole world better than this. A cheap shot to the injured, isolated, in bad health is easy if you believe they did it to themselves. I most often hurt the people I love. And it's easy to forget that the hurting need a hug. But I think we can do better, a whole lot better, a whole lot better than this. So I think we can do better, a whole world better than this. But left with my devices in the hand I was dealt, I would sit on the couch lamenting how I felt. Would seek first my security, ignoring cause and effect. I stay inside my head, never turn my neck. Cause it's hard to find your footing, keeping one foot in the grave. And it's hard to get momentum when you always hesitate. So we can travel all we want, but we can't escape. We're all in this together with a cross-stitched fate. But I think we can do better, a whole lot better. A whole lot better than this. So I think we can do better, a whole world better than this. Yes, I think we can do better, a whole lot better. To those friends and family out in the weather, and to those people we'd rather punch than kiss, I think we can do better, a whole world better than this. Yes, I think we can do better, a whole lot better, a whole lot better than this. Yes, I think we can do better, treat the whole world better than this.
Man, we need more people, grace-filled people in this world.
I agree.
Thank you for the inspiration for that. Well, thanks for tuning in to Spirituality Adventures, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks again for tuning in. Remember to visit our support page at www.spiritualityadventures.com. If you like what you heard, be sure to share it and leave a comment. Thanks again. Have a great day.
Harvey Media Production.